All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us this evening. This is the kickoff meeting for the Southwest Burlington Boundary Review meeting with our Boundary Review Committee, which is comprised of the Boundary Review Steering Committee, so staff and trustees, and also our parent representatives from the schools. So before kicking off all of our itinerary for this evening, I will hand it off to Eleanor to do the land acknowledgement.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Good evening, everybody. We begin by acknowledging the land and our responsibility to care for and respect all that provides us with life. This land upon which HDSB is situated is on the ancestral treaty and title lands of the Anishinaabeg, Ojibwe, Michizzageeg Nation, now known as the Mississaugas of the Credit. Michizzageeg territory in the past and present continues to host both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. The HDSB is committed to continuous knowledge building with respect to actions that address and resolve the ongoing impacts of colonialism. We do this by learning and understanding the true history, treaty obligations, duties, and responsibilities, and Indigenous rights, while actively maintaining mutually beneficial relationships and collectively respecting and caring for the land. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor. All right, so we have a pretty packed agenda for this evening. We're going to go through a number of items, and admittedly, this is going to be really, I'll be the talking head for this evening in the little Brady Bunch screen of yours. We'll be going through a lot of details this evening. We're going to kind of set the stage for this boundary review process. And hopefully at the end of this meeting, it'll be me talking a lot less in future meetings where we're going to be in person and we're going to be going through the materials, doing the work, and working together. That's not to say we'll have some time for some questions along the way, or if there's anything that's required for clarification, by all means, just use the little hands up symbol that you'll see at the bottom of your screen, and we'll come answer your question as soon as possible. If you could, please avoid using the comment section on the Google. I might not see it, and it might not be available through the video recording. So we just want to make sure we're keeping track of all the information that's discussed this evening. So, agenda for tonight. First and foremost, we want to talk about the objectives of this review and introduce the members of our committee. We're going to talk about the resolution that was passed by the board and what the overall intent and outcome of the review is that we're seeking to achieve. We're going to give a brief overview of the communication plan as to how we're communicating this to both our parents and the wider community. Then we're going to get into the materials. So we're going to start with the how to read overview. So what we're doing there is just kind of giving you a crash course on how to absorb the materials, what the charts mean, what the maps mean, and what the tables and information means that Mitch had circulated to you earlier today. Then we're going to talk about the study area that we're reviewing this evening in terms of the affected areas of the boundary review, as well as the growth areas that are affecting driving growth or declines. Then we're going to go through a list of assumptions. So what that means is the things that we're assuming as part of our considerations in developing the options for this boundary review. Then we're going to present to you 4 options this evening. The first one's the status quo, so the do nothing option. That's the first one. And then 3 proposed changes to the boundaries. And then we'll open the floor up for questions and feedback. We'll also open it up a little bit earlier on before we get into the options. All right, so first and foremost, I'd be remiss to not acknowledge and thank the volunteer parent representatives that are joining us on this boundary review. This one especially, it's going to be a number of meetings, I suspect, because it is a pretty complex review. And there's a big time commitment to review the materials, participate in the meetings, and provide your feedback along the way. So right now we're still gathering, I think we have at least one parent representative for all the affected schools, either direct effect or indirectly affected schools. And we hope to have them all by the next meeting. We're not going to go through introductions this evening, but I'm looking forward to next week's meeting where we're in person and personally meet everybody and have a little bit of an icebreaker so we can get to know one another. But for this evening, again, sorry, it's me, the talking head. We'll get through some stuff and then we'll get into the fun bits next week. But anyways, again, a big thank you to you all. Both senior team as well as our trustees are very appreciative of this process. The parent representation and the participation is crucial in getting to a good outcome. So we're very thankful for you joining us. So in terms of the Boundary Review Steering Committee, which is the other half of the Boundary Review Committee, the BRC, we have two co-chairs. It's Colette Ruddock, which gives her regrets for this evening. She had other commitments, as well as myself. And then we have the trustees of the affected areas, which include Robbie Bryden and Trustee Margot Horn. The expanded area, so these trustees, and I'd say that Amy's kind of between the two affected and expanded areas, but are Amy Collard and Shi Zhang. So thank you for joining us tonight. The affected area superintendents are Colette Ruddock and Nick Frankovich, and we have the expanded area superintendents that are joining us, which is Eamon Flahat, which I believe sends his regrets this evening, Eleanor McIntosh, my co-chair for the Boundary Review Committee, and Jonathan Shaws. In terms of planning department, you have myself, Frederick Thibault, which is the co-chair for both committees, Michelle Dagwar, which is our senior planner that develops the enrollment projections and the options alongside with the committee. We have Mitchell Gundy, which is our analyst and support as part of this review. And we have Marco Chu, which isn't joining us this evening, but is responsible for doing the visuals for the mapping and gathering or displaying additional data as may be requested by the Boundary Review Committee. And last but certainly not least, we have Romer. Sorry, Romer, I never really asked you, how do you pronounce your last name?
Abalos.
Abalos. All right, we have Romer Abalos, which is our representative from the Halton Student Transportation Services. So Romer is going to assist us in determining what the walkable areas are, what the exception areas are for student transportation, and providing some of that key insights as we develop these options.
Fred, just a point of clarification.
All right, so let's get into it. So back in November 4th, the Board of Trustees approved.
Fred, I think somebody tried to say something and you can.
Michelle was trying to pipe in there.
Yeah, Fred, sorry, Fred, just a point of clarification. Eleanor McIntosh is the co-chair of the BRC.
BRC, I said, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Colette's the co-chair of the BRSC. So we
That's
have
correct.
two committees. Apologies. All right, so November 4th, Board of Trustees approved a motion to complete a boundary review in Southwest Burlington to rebalance enrollments. That resolution reads as it's displayed on the screen. And really the big piece of it is there's an acknowledgement that there's an imbalance of enrollment in Southwest Burlington, both some schools being overutilized and other schools being underutilized, and looking to see if there's any adjustments that can be made to improve overall utilizations for both the English and the French immersion program. So the purpose of this review is, like I mentioned earlier, we want to address the overutilization at Tom Thompson. We want to simplify a lot of the grades 6 to 7 and grade 8 to 9 pathways and reduce split cohorts. So because of the middle school model we have here, the number of programs, the types of schools that we have, there's a lot of split cohorts that are there between students going to different schools as they transition from junior, senior, elementary, and into secondary. We're going to try to fix or better align some of these cohorts so that there's more continuity for our student body. We also want to make sure that we have long-term balanced enrollment. So we're not creating situations where we're going to have a school overutilized down the road or another school underutilized. So we want to try to make sure that with the space that we have, let's try to and attempt to keep kids in bricks and mortars and not create any issues down the road. And then where we can't utilize some of the empty spaces, there might be a general discussion on maybe what are some strategies to better utilize our empty spaces in South Burlington. I'll say that given the timeline and the complexity of this review, initially we had thought that there might be opportunities to implement some of these actions by September of 2026. But given that approvals might not happen till late summer, potentially early fall, I think a more realistic timeline is implementation to start in September 2027. But again, that's going to be part of the discussion of this committee moving forward. But I just want to set expectations if you do have your parents in your respective communities asking, like, when's this going to happen? You can tell them it's probably not going to be for next year, but more to come. In terms of our process, it's a multi-stage process. The first kickoff is, like I mentioned, the Board of Trustees approving the commencement of the review. We established our bound review steering committee. The committee decided what school should be involved, what's the scope of the review, and what kind of pathway are we undertaking. In this case, the decision was to include the schools that are presently here this evening, as well as undertake a pathway one, which is the establishment of the bound review committee, as well as a public information meeting. Now we're at this stage here for our inaugural bound review steering committee and bound review committee meeting. We're going to have a number of these meetings over the course of the next couple months. Once we've got a good sense of what options we want to present to the community, typically I like to go in with 2, maybe 3, not more than that. And then that's what we present to the community as some viable options that we as a committee would feel comfortable advancing. Then we collect the survey responses and their feedback. We take that back again as a committee. We sit down, do some more work, and we start talking about, well, which is the option we want to proceed with to recommend to senior team as well as the Board of Trustees for consideration and approval. What are some of the implementation considerations? Are we doing a certain amount of grandparenting? What grades are they going to be? What are the transitions looking like? When do we do this? These are all questions that we're going to be discussing at that point in time. And then once we have that as a bound review committee recommendation, that goes up to the steering committee. Then the steering committee provides their recommendation as is or amended to senior team, which is comprised of all the superintendents as well as director of education. Director of education then provides their recommendation either as it was recommended by the BRC and BRC to the Board of Trustees, and ultimately the final decision lies with trustees for approval. So throughout that entire process, a lot of it's not going to be voting or anything like that. It's more we're going to try to reach consensus on what the best option is going to be. And then we present that as a recommended option, and whatever lands up in front of the board table. Like I said, it's ultimately the Board of Trustees that decide. After that's done, we notify the community and we start the process of transitioning these changes in, and we implement. So this is going to be happening over a course of probably most of it in the year, and then that implementation and transition committee is probably going to be after the approvals, which will probably be for a good year's time. In terms of our comms plan, we try to advertise this as much as possible. We want to make sure that our parent communities are well aware of what's happening, that there's no surprises come school year start. So we do a number of things. We create a dedicated bound review study page. So this is a good resource for not only yourselves, but for any parent communities that are part of your communities that are asking for more information. Direct them to the website. Everything will be posted there. Our minutes, our presentations, our options, all of the materials you have will also be provided to the community. So it's a good resource there. We have a bound review, a dedicated email for this bound review. So again, if your parent communities have questions, they can direct them here. We will respond to those questions, and we usually save those questions and place them in your folder so you have access to them as well if you want to see what discussions are being had outside the process. We do send a number of communications to the affected school through our school messenger services. We try to advise them as much as possible as we're going through the process so no one's caught off guard. So you've probably already seen a few messages go out explaining process has started. We've got our committee. We're starting this, and we'll be notifying them along the way too with when the public meeting is going to be set, et cetera, et cetera. Yourselves, you have your bound review committee folder, which we provide all the information. We send notifications to all families as well as new families that are moving in. We're trying to advertise on our social media web pages, our dedicated school web pages, and so forth. So there's a number of resources there that I can direct yourselves as well as where you can direct your parent communities. If they're having questions and you're not comfortable answering some of those questions, send them to the website, you send them to us. And we're happy to assist in the delivery of additional information. Those are also conversations that you should feel free to bring back to the table when we're discussing options and you're learning from your community, maybe from what they're telling you or what you're gathering from parent councils or what have you. You're a conduit of information to us. So again, feel free to keep that line of communication open, share it with the rest of your peers so that everyone's well informed. Maybe I'll take a quick break. Any questions up to this point before I get into explaining the types of materials we'll be presenting to you over the course of this review? All right. Take that as we're good. All right. So this is the how to read section. So got a number of materials that are going in. We got a lot of maps, visual materials. We got a lot of tables, a lot of graphs and things like that. So I'm just going to walk us through what each of these things mean, some of the thought process behind them. And if at any point you have a question, just raise that little hand and I'd be happy to answer it. So you don't have to wait till the end of this section to ask them. So starting with our study area and zone maps. One of the very useful things we found over the years that we've been doing bound reviews is there's a lot of geography. Not everyone's very familiar with cardinal directions, or people interpret it differently. Road names aren't known to everyone. We have a number of different communities. I don't expect you to know all of these things. So part of the work that we do is we take all of these geographies and we divide them up into study areas. And these study areas, we use dividing lines that use natural boundaries, historic boundaries, roadways, forests, things like that, so that they're logical divisions of space for the most part. Some of these are very old and maybe don't align, but have a history behind them. And these are segments of the population that we have projections for in those particular study areas. And at the end of the day, what it is like, think of it as a big puzzle. Is each one of these have the specific projection for both the English program and the FI program for the varying grades. And what we're doing is building these together in order to develop options. So when we're communicating options, a lot of times you're going to hear we're moving zone 1 over from Kings Road over to Central. And that's how we're able to communicate quite effectively how we're changing boundaries. And it makes it easier for the community to understand as well. And it also gives you the opportunity as we're going through this, if you're wanting to spitball or suggest some options to us, though that's an easy way to communicate is, you know, what if we sent zone 3, which this is an example here of what it looks like, to school X? What does that option look like? So that's how we divide our areas and how we build our projections. And each one of these has a consideration of for the existing individuals living in this community, the projection of that, as well as all the development that's tied to that specific study area. So we're cognizant of the future growth too. Next up, we have our catchment area maps. So these maps, there's going to be a number of colors, both in shaded areas as well as outlined areas. So the shaded areas, let's say this red one here, that's representative of a school's junior and or the K-8 school boundaries. Again, Southwood Burlington has the middle school mall, so we have a number of schools that are K-6 with that feed into K-8 schools. So that's how we're representing it. So the junior or the K-8 schools are represented in the shaded areas, and the more senior elementary boundaries that are more just absorbing the larger areas, those are representing in the outlines. So a lot of times when the 7 and 8s go to the large school, so in this case here, Tecumseh, representing that as part of their senior boundaries. Tecumseh also has K-6 boundaries. So you'll see a lot of that. And that's a good indicator for you to look at too, as we're exploring how to avoid split boundaries. So if you're seeing kind of a differentiation or kind of a line that's cutting through a shaded area, that probably means there's a split boundary in that area. Michelle, did I miss anything on that explanation, or do you think we're good on that? Or if there's any questions on the map piece.
I think you caught everything.
All right, next up, the numbers. So for every option, we're going to have a pretty big, sorry, my hands here, a pretty big sheet of a projection for every one of the schools. And these ones, we're not going to be displaying this information as part of the presentation. This is always going to be an additional resource that you have as a backup. The community will also have, they'll be posted on the website. But this gives you the detailed breakdown of all of the enrollment. So for every school, we'll list the name here. We'll provide you with the on-the-ground capacity, the OTG. So that's the built capacity of the school, bricks and mortar. We'll identify the number of maximum portables. What's the maximum number we can place on site, what the equivalent capacity of that is, and then the total capacity of the school. The total capacity represents what is the maximum number of students you can have on that site, which would assume the building's full and all the portables are in place and all of them are full. And usually we don't want to pass that. Once you pass that, we have a problem or we need a solution. Afterwards, we have the program. So all the programs that we're reviewing are listed. We have English, FI, and special education. Note, special education, we list it here, but we're not reviewing it. That's not part of the boundary review process, but we do want to show you the numbers on how many students are expected in that program, because it does have an impact on utilization and the accommodation needs. We'll give you the by-year projection for the English program, the FI program if it's there. We'll provide you with a total with a gradient of colors. The gradients mean that if it's green, it's below 100% utilization, and that's not the full site capacity, just the building itself. So that's relating to your OTG here. Okay. If it's yellow, that means it's above 100% utilization. And then if it's red, that means we've surpassed the total capacity of the site. So essentially, green means we're fine, yellow means we're portables, red means we've surpassed and we have an issue. And we need to either have a solution, which is maybe the opening of a new school, a future boundary review, or what have you, or it identifies a problem with the option that either needs rectification or means the option's not feasible. Afterwards, we have percent utilization. So what this is it's always the total number of students over the capacity of the school, and that gives us our utilization here. Then we have the available number of pupil places at the school. So a positive number means we have empty spaces. A negative number means we have a deficit, meaning we need portables. And then last but not least, we have the final line, which explains how many portables we have, which is essentially the surplus number, or sorry, the deficit number of classrooms divided by 23. So that's the table format. So once you really want to dive into the numbers and better understand the progression of students and the projections, those will be the tables you want to refer to. This is how we're going to be displaying this visually as part of our presentations, as well as to yourselves and the community. So this is just an easier way to absorb this and identify some issues or opportunities or whatever. And we do all of this for every school, for every option. So you're going to have this chart multiple times for each one of the schools. So in this case here, we identify the school name. We have our 10-year slice of the enrollment projections. We have our black line here, which is what we were discussing earlier, the built capacity of the physical school, permanent school. So that's the OTG capacity. And then we have the red line, which is the total capacity of the school, which means the OTG capacity, built school, plus the equivalent capacity of the max number of portables that can fit on site. Go ahead, Michelle.
Just another point of clarification, we provide the charts for schools that are impacted in the option. So if the school has a status quo option, or so if the school is a status quo projection, we will be providing that chart.
This one here, right, Michelle?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got Bhavna Dougal.
That's right, Frederick. Thank you very much. Not everyone gets my name right on the first go, but kudos to you.
Okay.
A big shout out from Burlington Central. That's where I'm the rep from. I just had two clarifications. Number one, I just wanted to confirm that I heard this correctly. Special education is not under review. The special education program is not under review as part of this broader boundary review exercise. Did I get that right?
That is correct. Yeah, that is handled through a separate administrative procedure under the student services AP or administrative procedures. So the relocation of those programs is entirely under their purview.
Okay, perfect. And then the second clarification was the boundary review that we're all going through right now. I was under the impression that this would be applicable for the upcoming academic year starting in September 26. But you just confirmed that it actually may go out to September 27?
That's correct. When we started, and great question. Initially, we were hopeful of maybe addressing some of these accommodation issues. Given the complexity of this as we were going through and developing options, what we started to realize is we might not have enough time to get this done by June, because we need we need to bring this forward to the Board of Trustees twice. One as deferred action, so we can let the community know this is the recommended option. And then a second time for final approval. So that gives people time to delegate and whatnot. And when we work that backwards from May, between now and the end of April, like that's quite a bit of work we may need to do. And by the time we're done with the staffing process and we're notifying the communities in June, we're just feeling it might be a little too late to notify them. It doesn't mean that it's a no entirely for 2026, but I think it might create a little bit discomfort for the communities if we're trying to fast track this. But again, it all depends on how the review goes. It may change, but I think it's reasonable to think 27 is the more likely outcome.
I love how, detailed you got in your explanation. I think it's perfectly reasonable to push it out to the 27-year academic year, and it makes our life as the rep council easier as well. But you need the time you need in order to make a very informed decision. So take the time you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Davina. Carissa?
Hi, everyone. I am the rep for Tom Thompson, or one of the reps for Tom Thompson. So first of all, what I can say is that potentially pushing this out to September of 2027 will be a welcome piece of news for particularly our school community. That's a huge concern that we've already heard from our parents at our community is how quickly this might take effect. So if that is the case, that would be very welcome news. I just wanted to seek a little bit of clarification. You had mentioned long-term balancing of enrollment. What is your definition of long-term? I noticed that these charts go to 2030. Some of them, I believe, went to 2033 and 2035. Are we looking at 10 years as a consideration for long-term, or what's that definition?
I'd say 10 years. Typically, I'd say when we're doing bound reviews, and usually this is more applicable to high growth areas, but Southwest Burlington, that might be you sooner rather than we know it, depending on how the housing market goes. But usually it's 10 years we like to look out. And if I don't make any changes in 10 years, fantastic. Realistically, I'd say if I don't make any changes in the 5-year timeline, that's a good, consistent run. And by the time you consider grant or legacy exemptions for students and everything else, typically we're not going to be hitting students twice with a boundary change. We want to make sure there's some stability for our students. We acknowledge that changing schools is not the easiest thing to do. So we want to make sure that whatever we're doing has a long-standing effect, and we're not doing this again in less than 5 years, to be honest. But 10 years is the goal.
Thank you so much.
Problem. All right, well, let's get into these charts now. Where was I? Oh, total site capacity. So, built, portable, together, and usually the rule we apply in the very visual representation here is as long as we're not passing this, there shouldn't be an issue. And Carissa, to your earlier point here, if usually this is a Milton issue that we're having or an Oakville North issue. But as if we've got a good clean 5 years and the trigger here to address this issue is the opening of a new school or a building of an addition, like that part of it, if we don't have a solution, then we have a problem with the option. So that's something to consider. Afterwards, we have the enrollments on the bottom here. So we break it out into the separate programs just so you can visually see, what the concentrations are for that school. So we have the English program in green, FI in blue, and special education in orange, and we provide the total number of students per year in this chart as well. Lastly, then we have the Michelle made this nice slide and I missed half of it. Sorry about that, Michelle. We have the portables down here. Again, it's the same visual representation we were doing earlier in the larger charts. We'll tell you what the max is for that school. If we're green, no portables required. Portables are yellow if that's the number that's permitted on site, and then red means we've surpassed it. We have an issue. And every school has a different number of max portables. And that's based on zoning, site coverage, parking, a number of issues, a number of considerations in determining what we can and can't add on top, or what we can and can't add on the school. So in terms of the study area, if you recall, I mentioned there's some schools that are going to be directly impacted and others that might be indirectly impacted. So the more direct impacted schools are listed here. So we have Burlington Central 7 and 8. They might be moved around depending as we're trying to fix some of these split cohort issues. We have Central Public School. We have Lakeshore Public School, Tecumseh Public School, Tom Thompson, Kings Road in a very limited aspect. It's more so the area that's east of the QEW, so represented here. And then we have Maplehurst. Again, this area here is the FI boundary for Maplehurst, which feeds into, is the Kings Road portion that feeds into Maplehurst. So they might be impacted east of the QE. Otherwise, the indirectly impacted, these are mostly the students where more than likely they're going to be receiving students, less so the students are going to be moving to alternative schools. Now, again, this may change throughout the process if we come up with some other options or other iterations. And that's why we've made sure that all parent communities are involved just in case that comes up. In terms of growth, like I mentioned, historically, Southwest Burlington, as you're probably well aware, back in 2017, when we did some pupil accommodation review or school closures, South Burlington has been in decline for a number of years. We do have a lot of underutilized spaces in a lot of our elementary schools. But that's not to say we don't have growth also coming. So in South Burlington, south of QE specifically, there is a total of three major transit station areas and the downtown urban core that are all going to be drivers of growth. We're looking at about 10,000 residential units across our study area that are going to be coming into play. Now, things have gotten a little bit complicated with the housing market the way it is. So we've historically had a pretty high number of students we were yielding from this development. But now a lot of this has gotten pushed further out as we see condo projects being canceled or delayed because pretty much the housing market, especially on the higher density, is flattened. It's dead at this present time. So a lot of those in future enrollment projections we pushed out the high density student generation. So you see that further down the road, but there is growth coming. Michelle, did I miss anything on that or?
No, you got it all.
All right, so assumptions. So in developing our options, a lot of times we have to make some key assumptions as to a consistent approach on how we uniformly apply certain rules, parameters, considerations in developing the options so we can compare and contrast all of them in equal terms. So as I mentioned earlier, in all these assumptions here, as there's a small likelihood that maybe we can implement some 2026 changes, but I don't really foresee that happening. So more than likely it's going to be pushed out to 2027 just to give us some time to get this this review completed, enough consultation completed. So a lot of the numbers you'll see the projections start changing in 2027. For this round, I think we still have 2026 numbers as a starting date. At least that just gives you an indication of what it looks like if it were next year. If it's not that, then we just push it out a year. So don't be alarmed on that front. Students west of the QEW. So where am I here? There we go. This area here, we don't expect them to be redirected elsewhere. To north of the QEW, same thing. I know it's been a few questions that come my way, at least prior to this review starting officially, as to why don't we convert some of these schools to a K-8, acknowledging the middle school model. We're not going to be exploring that as part of this review. There's quite a few limitations, I would say, in converting a K-6 school to a K-8 if it wasn't historically a K-8 school in the past. K-8 schools have a lot more specialized classrooms like design and technology rooms, art rooms, science rooms, and things like that, where a K-6 school won't have those facilities. Same thing with like a larger gym. So that's why the conversion for us is it's just not on the table at this present time. So I just want to leave that off. If we have to talk about it again, happy to do so in future meetings. But for now, we're saying that it's a no-go. We don't want to create more French immersion schools. So the intent here is that we want a maximum of 2 south of QEW and southeast of QEW. So essentially this area over here. Again, we only have a certain amount of FI population. We want to make sure that we have robust programs. We have a good, strong body of students, and we've got the resources to provide it. And again, if the more you spread yourself out, the more teacher resources you need. And as you probably know, if you are in the FI program, FI teachers are hard to come by. And usually when we make our assumptions, if we're looking at relocating the FI program, which is on the table as part of this review, we always assume that the school that has the FI program will always have a higher number of grade 1 students going into the program compared to a school that's feeding into it from another geography. So as an example here, we'll use the current one, Tom Thompson. We expect there's a higher proportionate number of students from grade 1 going into grade 2 FI because of the fact the program is at the same school. If we were to, let's say, relocate it to another school, we will assume that the proportion of students deciding to go to FI will probably be less than if it were in the school because it's less accessible, it requires transportation, and some parents may decide it just doesn't work in their either the scheduling or their needs or what have you to go to that program. So we always downgrade it a little bit in terms of how many students are moving into the program. And this is something we've historically seen in any situation that we do. Any future boundary that we implement. When we're looking at developments, we're always assuming that 15% of the students that are yielded from that development are going to go to the FI program, and the remaining 85% are going to go to the English program. So if we have a condo development that has 100 students, we assume 85% of those students are going to go to their English track school and 15% to the FI school. We already talked about the special education piece, so we're not defining new boundaries for them. And we're going to be looking at removing the program. Michelle, go ahead.
Actually, that number 9, you can strike that one out. We do have some phasing involved for the FI class.
Oh, all right. We'll strike that one out. Whew, a lot of assumptions here. K-6 students entering grade 6 will more than likely give them legacy exemptions. If you're on your final year, typically we don't move you schools. We leave you graduate out with your cohort, give them the opportunity to have that graduation ceremony. Phasing again could be explored. So that means, how quickly we implement these changes. We can do it over a number of years. Same thing with grade 7 and 8, same approach. We're going to probably legacy exempt them because, again, we want to make sure, especially with split cohorts, we want to make sure that we're not disrupting their graduation and that they stay together with their current student bodies. We will be making a slight adjustment to the study area. Sorry, which zone was this, Michelle? This is zone. Nine, is it 8?
It's between 11 and Central.
Oh, between 11 and Central. Okay. So we're just going to make a quick little boundary adjustment so to better align with the CN Railway. We have a little pocket of development here. Sorry.
Yeah, what we have there is a pocket of development where we have one address, but the new development will be going to 2 schools. So we want to keep that one development going to 1 school.
As opposed to splitting it. And again, that goes to having some reasonable geographies where, your front door neighbor is going to a different school than you are. We're trying to avoid that. Backyard neighbor, that's a different story. But moving on. And then last but not least, I think part of this, again, with our intent to try to adjust all of these boundaries, if we have to, we'll probably also be discussing some changes to split cohorts for the grade 8 to grade 9 transition. So that might be part of the discussion at a later date too. Whew. All right. So now we're going to go on the school profiles and just give you a little bit of context as to why you're part of this review and why your school community is part of this review. Again, I encourage you, this is probably a good resource to share with your parent communities or parent council if they're wondering, like, why is Tom Thompson part of this? Here's a good little fact sheet as to why it is. So starting with Tom Thompson, long and short of it is that it is a rather small school. We have quite a bit of an overutilization. We're not really getting near max capacity anytime soon, but we do have 7 portables on the site, which is encumbering quite a bit of it at the present time. So we're looking at opportunity design. Can we take that overutilization and fill up a school that has a number of empty classrooms available to it? Frees up a little bit of the sites and maybe addresses some of the other resource issues that are happening at Tom Thompson. Right. Central Public School. This one's part of the review, as there's definitely some areas that we can clean up in terms of zones. You'll note here, just as an example, we have a large area that's removed from that boundary. That's currently being bused all the way to Kings Road. So is there opportunity to maybe bring them back into the more immediate community, create a more walkable area, as well as maybe rebalance some of the program options with other schools in the area, and maybe provide some changes that, kind of, like I said, rebalance schools and maybe introduce additional programs. Lakeshore is part of this because we definitely do have some surplus capacity available. So there's some opportunities here to maybe reintroduce students closer to their home school. Tecumseh is part of the review as a potential recipient of additional students, but also exploring the opportunity to maybe relocate areas that are a lot more distant, maybe repatriate them to a school that's closer by, and maybe explore again the addition of additional programs. Long term, though, they do have a healthy enrollment. So this is more of the, can we create a model that is more proximate, more neighborhood school model, more walkable, et cetera, et cetera. Burlington Central Elementary, so this is the 7A cohort. They're part of this review, as inevitably we're going to have to see, what the feeder schools are going into it. Are we going to have to review the FI component and also addressing some of the split cohort issues that we're currently having with the FI piece, with east of Guelph going to Nelson and
east of Guelph going from Burlington Central. Is going from, Burlington Central to Nelson. Yeah.
All right. So that was part of it. Inevitably, and if we're changing things up, they're going to probably be receiving some additional enrollments too. Kings Road, biggest reason they're part of the review is they have this area here that's east of QEW. This is the more direct impact that we want to see. Are there opportunities to bring them more proximate to their school where they're not having to take the bus? And could instead walk. Same thing with Maplehurst, as we discussed earlier. We have this little bit here that feeds into Maplehurst for the FI program coming from Kings Road. So are there opportunities to bring this into the east of QEW area? Aldershot Elementary, anything that we do that sends additional students towards Maplehurst or Kings Road will have an impact on the 7 and 8s feeding into Aldershot, because we're going to want to make sure that they all go to the same place. Pine Lane Public School. Here we definitely have an opportunity to utilize some of the empty spaces that are at the school. There's also been a longstanding concern that since there were changes made to the FI program back in 2018, a little bit before my time, the school has declined a little bit in enrollment. And there's some concerns that, it could be higher if there were additional resources. So that's why it's part of the review, as maybe there's opportunities to explore redirecting some enrollment this way or finding alternative uses for those empty spaces. McQuindam is similar situation where we have quite a bit of space available. There's definitely some opportunities here to see if there's some programming shifts that can be explored. And if there's redirections or rejigging of programs, how does that impact it? How do we maintain our split cohorts? Or sorry, avoid having split cohorts and having unified grade 8s coming together. Clarksdale, this is part of the review more so for a receiver school. Can we send more enrollments this way and make use of this surplus capacity we have? And same with Rolling Meadows, because Clarksdale is a K-6 model. They're included as being the recipient of the 7 and 8 seniors. And again, we have an opportunity to utilize some of that surplus space. There we go, right here. All right, so that's the profile in a nutshell. As I mentioned earlier, and as Mitch sent off earlier today, we provided you with a folder with all of the information that we're presenting tonight, as well as all of the projection worksheets, the presentation, the zone map, and some of the criteria we're going to be discussing in our next meeting. Part of that question is going to come up of how do we want to prioritize these boundary review criterias? What do they mean? And how do we weigh each option against those criteria to, as a committee, determine which ones are best suited to be presented to the community and ultimately implement or provided for consideration to trustees for approval. That was a lot. Any questions up to this point before we jump into the options? Michelle, did I miss anything, or?
No, I think you're good to go ahead.
So you guys can tell Michelle's my backup on this. All right, well, let's move on then. So doing nothing is always an option. So that's our status quo at present time. And this is the current state of affairs in Southwest Burlington. So these are our boundaries at present time. Like I mentioned earlier, the shaded areas represent the K-6 or K-8 boundaries, and then the outline areas are for our middle schools. So our K-6 schools, this is ultimately where they go. So in that example, everybody within that zone are going to Tecumseh. For 7 and 8s here in the red zone, we have those students going to Burlington Central. As I alluded to earlier, you'll see here where we have a red and green line cutting through Tom Thompson's boundary. That means we have a split cohort. So that's some of the stuff we're looking to clean up as part of this review. Same thing here with this area here in Kings Road. So as you'll note, like, we have some areas that are kind of dispersed from one another, and there might be some opportunities to bring them closer to one another. FI, we're a little bit cleaner on our overall boundaries. For the most part, a little bit cleanup here that could be explored. But otherwise, in terms of the feeding into the 7 and 8s, it's generally okay. When we get into the secondary, that's where we start seeing some additional split cohorts that we're going to have to deal with at a later date. So in terms of enrollment projections, current state is, as I mentioned earlier, Tom Thompson is significantly overutilized right now. We almost have as many students and portables than we do inside of the school. So there's definitely an opportunity here to see, okay, well, can we redirect this growth elsewhere, free up some of that site that's currently being encumbered by, I think we're at 7 portables right now. Central Public School, we got a pretty healthy enrollment long-term as K-6 school. We're about 90%. So, albeit we're not at the line, I'd say we're relatively full, given the number of classrooms being used and what have you. So long-term, pretty healthy enrollment. Lakeshore Woods, again, we have some space available that we can maybe do something with. Tecumseh, and we went through this generally with the school profile, so I won't spend too much time. But if you have a question specific to your school, feel free to stop me and raise your hand. Tecumseh, long-term, here, we're definitely just on the cusp of just going over capacity. We have both the English track and the spec ed program that are currently at the school. Burlington Central Elementary, this is the 7 and 8s prior to going to high school. In this case here, we have both French immersion and the English track program, and there's some opportunities for some space here. This is a little bit of a tricky one because the space is kind of interchangeable between the secondary and the elementary panel. There is an area cordoned off for the elementary panel, but if there's an issue with that, we can explore maybe reallocating classrooms as needed. Kings Road, similarly, we have some capacity left here. But again, given it's K-6 school, we're close to that 90% threshold, 85, 90. So essentially most classrooms are being utilized. Maplehurst, some space available, and this growth that we're seeing down the way, this is the Aldershot major transit station area. That's a little bit further west, past near the Glenview Public School. Anyway, the growth is direct there, and that's what you're seeing down the road. Aldershot Elementary at present, they have a pretty healthy enrollment, so they're pretty much at capacity. Same thing as the Burlington Central. We do have the secondary component attached to this. If need be, there's definitely opportunity to realign classes. And again, these are senior grades, so where a lot of this, we're assuming a 23-to-1 loading, because they're senior grades, you're definitely going to see a higher number of students per classroom than lower grades. Clarksdale Public School, we definitely have some space long-term in the school to accommodate some students, and this is both a dual-track school. Rolling Meadows, same thing, some space, dual-track school. I could certainly take on some additional enrollment, especially in the senior grades. McQuindam, long-term, we do have quite a bit of space available in the school. So there's definitely opportunities, but we do have some challenges with, what we can send this way without impacting other schools negatively. Pinelands, again, a lot of space available. We do have a pretty, I'd say a pretty strong population, but it could benefit potentially from additional students to bring it up to additional resources. So starting with option one and moving through this a little bit slower. So to start, option one. There's my cursor. Okay. So first and foremost, we're going to be exploring as part of this one, moving zones 1, 3, and 4 from Central. And we're going to be redirecting it to Lakeshore, represented in purple here. In zone 1, this is from Kings Road, as you might recall. Then second, we're looking at zone 2, which is also part of Kings Road. We'd be looking to send them to Central Public School. Area 9 here, we're going to be fixing that split cohort situation and be sending the 7 and 8s to Burlington Central as opposed to Tecumseh, where they're currently going. And zone 10 up here, which is formerly Tecumseh, we'd be sending them over to Clarksdale and Rolling Meadows for 7 and 8s. Last but not least, we have area 11 here, which is currently going to Tecumseh. We would be sending them over to Rolling Meadows in their entirety. Caitlin?
Hi, Fred. Thanks for taking my question. My students are currently at Clarksdale and Rolling Meadows, and just wanted to double check that the projections include the growth in Alton West in those schools too. They do. Okay.
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of Alton West is keeping them up while the
Yes.
is coming down. So it ends up just being flat. But good question. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, so that's the English track changes. All right. For the FI component, Central is converted into a dual track school. So the FI program is effectively being sent to Central in this option. So areas 1 and 2, which were at Kings Road, for FI, they were at Maplehurst, are now being sent to Burlington Central. And then zones 10 and 11 are being sent over to Rolling Meadows and Clarksdale for the FI program. Okay. So in short term, and again here, just recall this is what it looks like if it was implemented for September. We would just be pushing it out to 2027 in this case, more than likely. But immediately what happens is by removing the French immersion program and addressing some of the other areas and zones 10, We're dropping the overall utilization at Tom Thompson and essentially bringing it to capacity. So that would remove the vast number of portables on site. We'll probably still have a couple left over, but you're probably going to go from 7 to 1 or 2 long term. For Central, we're doing quite a number of changes. So by rebalancing the English track program, then reintroducing the FI program, we do succeed in keeping it below the OTG capacity. And this way, the other advantage too is now we have essentially FI pretty well contained at Central Public School, and then transition pretty much across the parking lot into Burlington Central Elementary, then Burlington Central High. So it's almost an FI campus at this point. With the introduction of FI at Central, we did remove some of the zones and we sent them over to Lakeshore. This filled up the empty space that we had at Lakeshore and brought them pretty much at their building capacity. And long term, they will require a couple portables, but well below the max. Tecumseh, and removing some of those students in zone 10. We are dropping the enrollment at around the probably 80% mark. So there is a little bit of a hit to that school. Burlington Central here still have some excess capacity. So the changes to the feeder school doesn't necessarily have a huge impact, albeit a little bit. Kings Road, we're taking away enrollments from there. So they're we're creating some additional space, but that comes at the, I guess, the benefit of at least sending that pocket of kids to a school that's close to their neighborhood and give them the opportunity to walk and ride to school. Maplehurst, same outcome as Kings Road. We're removing students out of the FI program. It's not a huge impact. There's not a lot of students attending the FI program in those 2 zones. So not a huge impact long term. Clarksdale, we certainly improve utilization overall and bringing the school closer to 500 pupils. And long term, we're still well under the capacity. And Rolling Meadows, with the addition of students, we get right up to the capacity of the school. Might see a couple portables long term. Otherwise, McQuendam, Pineland, and Aldershot Elementary remain status quo. So there's no changes to their long-term enrollments. Any questions on option 1? All right. Option 2. Oh, Caitlin.
Sorry, I have another one. As part of the review, are the wards also like, I know there's some messaging around the city about wards, because counselors and school trustees sometimes get, like, with the boundary south of the QEW for some of these schools, like again, our school, that would change the trustee in the ward for those individuals, right? So just, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, like I don't have much consideration for, I had no consideration for counselor wards in terms of determination of boundaries. And for trustees, that's why we have trustees as part of the process, so they're aware of it. Yeah. But I don't think it's a huge issue if it's crossing different ward boundaries and things like that. They're different compositions, essentially, what the municipalities use versus what we use. So it's, yeah, sometimes a challenge to align with their boundaries versus our boundaries.
Yeah, I would just, again, I don't want to get into too much anecdotes here, but we've struggled with some issues where we're located very far east, far east in the boundaries. And so we're not even in the same ward as my kid's school, which can get kind of challenging if there's issues with like city maintenance of property, that kind of thing, but around the school. So in terms of like snow clearance, let's say, and safety of the kids, right? Who do we reach out to? That's all. But anyway, that's probably not really for this conversation, but just
fair question regardless.
All of us to kind of keep in mind is the impact it has with dealing with our counselors as well.
Fair point, Caitlin. Robin?
Yeah, there are a certain number of students who live in one ward and attend school in another ward, and more in high school, and that's just a fact of what happens. And sometimes those families, when they need assistance, we'll reach out to both trustees and keep us both in the loop.
And I would definitely encourage that, and even outside of this process, like even your counselors hit everybody up, as well as the maintenance department too. Just keep everybody apprised. All right, moving on to option number 2. So this is where we're using Tecumseh as an FI school. Sorry if my voice gives up tonight. All right, so start this. There's my mouse. Okay, starting from the top. Tom Thompson's now just a single track school again. So, and they will be Tom Thompson Zone 9. Area 1 is going, and Area 2 as well is going from Kings Road over to Central Public. Zone 4, study Area 4, is going from Central to Lakeshore. Zones 9, 7, and 8 are going to Burlington Central as well. And then we got Zone 10 that's going from Tom Thompson here over to Clarksdale. And then Rolling Meadows for the senior grades. We have Zone 11 going from Tecumseh over to Rolling Meadows in its entirety. And then, missing anything? Okay, that's it for the elementary or English panel or English stream. And then for the FI, Michelle, go ahead.
You had area 12 that goes from Tecumseh to Lakeshore.
Okay, there. Thank you, Michelle. Oops. The zone over here. We're sending that from Tecumseh over to Lakeshore. So in this scenario here, Tecumseh becomes the FI school in Southwest Burlington. So it's taking on all of these students. And then Burlington Central. So just to clarify, albeit Tecumseh is a K-8 school, it's only going to be taking on grades 2 to 6. So at grade 6, those students, they'll be graduating from Tecumseh and they're going to be going to Burlington Central to continue on their FI programming. So very similar to what's happening at Tom Thompson right now in grade 6, they go to Burlington Central. It'd be the same thing here for Tecumseh. And that's just to make sure that we have some continuity for those that are in the Aldershot area, so that it's, they're a unified cohort. Carissa?
Just seeking clarification for, it will be a full 2 to 6 or like for both French immersion as well as English track?
Just French immersion will be 2 to 6.
Oh.
English will continue to be a K-8. So we just wanted to highlight that little bit of awkwardness because we want to maintain Burlington Central as the 7 and 8 for FI. So instead of having them graduate to Tecumseh in 8 and having Aldershot having a separate cohort going in earlier at Burlington Central, we just wanted to have them all come in at the same time. So that's the thought behind that.
Understood.
Tecumseh English track, still a K-8, FI 2 to 6.
Got you. Thank you.
No problem. And then zones 10, 11, we're relocating them from Tecumseh and from Tom Thompson over to Rolling Meadows, and then zone 10 over to Clarksdale and Rolling Meadows. Take some of the pressure off. A lot of moving parts on this one. Again, Tom Thompson and removing the FI program, we really alleviate a lot of that overutilization. Burlington Central, we're shifting. Carissa, is that a new question or same one?
Nope, sorry, just didn't put down the hand.
Oh, okay. All good. Burlington Central, again, we're in that 90% range, so effectively full, I would say. Lakeshore Public School, we do improve utilization by shifting some of those zones over to it. So we're not full, but we're probably in that 80-90% range. It's a comfortable area to be in. Tecumseh, we're kind of rebalancing. So by taking away some of those students from Zone 11, redirecting them over to Rolling Meadows, we're freeing up some space. We introduced the FI program, and now we're just under capacity. So we have a pretty healthy enrollment long-term here. Burlington Central Elementary, the changes are fine long-term again because we're maintaining that 7 and 8 FI cohort. Kings Road, again, we're impacting it by removing zones 1 and 2 and sending them over to Central. Maplehurst, same thing for the FI program. We're taking them and then we're sending them over to Tecumseh. Clarksdale benefits from a jump in enrollment by getting zones 10 and 11. And same thing with Rolling Meadows, benefiting from the redirection of zones 10 and 11 for the FI program. This one, similarly to option 1, again, we have McQuindam and Pineland Public School and Aldershot Elementary not impacted significantly by the changes, or not impacted by the changes. And last but not least, we have option 3. All right. Where's my mouse? There it is. Jesse?
Hi there. I just wanted to ask about how much walkability is taken into account. Right now I'm a parent at Central Elementary, representing Central Elementary, but I also have a student at Tom Thompson, and we can walk to either of those schools. Tecumseh, it just seems like it's on the other side of Guelph Line. It will make a lot of families difficult for that to happen. In my mind, it would be a lot of busing, obviously, but yeah, just thinking about that.
No, fantastic question, and yes is the answer. We do consider walkability in the neighborhood model. So as I mentioned earlier, we alluded to the boundary review criteria. So at our next meeting, one of the first orders of business is going to be, we're going to review all the criteria that we have as part of these reviews, and as a committee, we're going to weigh in the importance of each one of those criteria. And that'll give us a sense of, whenever we review these options, we weigh them against these criteria. And walkability is a big one. So that's going to be the neighborhood model. Is this going to be a walkable option? Yes or no? And is this option succeeding in meeting those criteria? Sorry, long-winded way to answer your question, which is yes, but that's the mechanism in which we're going to be weighing that.
Thanks.
Megan?
Just piggybacking off of that question as well. I'm one of the representatives for Tecumseh, but I live in Zone 11. So my kids are bused into Tecumseh. Thinking about busing and walking and everything, is there a reason why you're putting Zone 11 into Rolling Meadows as instead of Central? Because I know, like, my high school student that's about to go into Central from Tecumseh grade 8, he's going to Central. So I was just more so wondering, no matter what, we're going to get bused in Zone 11. Was there a reasoning why we were being bused to Rolling Meadows instead of Central?
It's probably a number of things, but Zone 11 does have a pretty high concentration of students in terms comparatively to the other smaller zones in and around Central. I think, Michelle, we're at around what, trying to remember here. It's a large number of students. So sending them down to Central, we would have to really offset the enrollment elsewhere. That's not to say we can't. That can be an option we review. Again, the first 3 options we're presenting tonight, that's the first 3. I suspect we're gonna have a lot more. I'd have to double check what the walking distance is, because usually it's a 1.6 kilometer walking distance that we use, and if there's any major barriers. Romer, help me out here. Did we, are there any exemption areas that they're not able to cross, and therefore it's not a walkable zone between Tecumseh, or sorry, that Zone 11 and Central? I'm thinking Plains and potentially Fairview, but
Yes, yeah, Plains Road, we wouldn't expect the JK to 8 to cross. So I think, yeah, for like Zone 11, like if whether they go to Rolling Meadows or Tecumseh or like even Central, like they're gonna end up being transported by a bus, most likely.
So that's the additional factor, Megan. So, and for everyone, we'll have more of this information because we're going to develop some walk webs that show what the walking distance is for starting from the school and working our way using a network model. So following the roads, 1.6 kilometers. We do have these things we call exemption areas where you might be within the 1.6 kilometer walk distance, but if there is an impediment to you getting to school, whether it's a major arterial, a road that doesn't have a safe crossing, no crossing guard, or there's a number of factors, we give you transportation. So in those situations, Megan, that's probably where we're looking at it, where you're bused regardless of wherever you go because of the roads that are surrounding you. So that's probably why it's hasn't been part of the consideration. But again, we can always review it. That's part of this process.
Okay, thank you.
I forgot where I left off. So I think, all right, let's start from the top. Shall I remember where? Let's start with zones 1 and 2 again. This is going to be the common factor, zones 1 and 2. Like, we are looking to bring them closer back in the community. So it's probably going to be Burlington Central or Lakeshore, depending on which one we're looking at. So those zones are being shifted over to Burlington Central. Zone 4 Central to Lakeshore, and Zone 12 from Tecumseh to Lakeshore. Susanna?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, so I am the parent rep for Kings Road. My son attends Kings Road and is currently bused. We are in that zone 1-2 area, just off of Maple. So my question is kind of, how many, is there anywhere that says like how many students exactly is in that area? Because my son is on a bus, like I said, and there's not that many people that go from that area to Kings Road. So I'm just wondering, changing all the boundaries, like, is that really affecting that many kids, having them still go to Kings Road?
So first question, yes, we have by zone projections and we have by zone numbers, so we can definitely provide that in our next meeting.
Okay.
To answer your second question, the rationale of zones 1 and 2 being moved from Kings Road to Central, it's really not an accommodation pressure question. It's more so we're putting them on a bus and sending them pretty distant way to get to their school. So we're thinking there's probably an opportunity here to fix this. I'll use the word fix like loosely, but to address this and perhaps bring an opportunity to have these kids closer to an elementary school that they could potentially walk to or ride to. So that's the thing between zone 1 and 2 is it's not a huge number of students. It's just providing that more proximate option for them for their elementary school experience. Same thing with secondary. They're even closer than if they were being directed or actually for secondary, they're already going. Michelle, am I right on that? Secondary, they are going.
Secondary, they're going to Burlington Central.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so my only follow-up question is kind of, I understand obviously now I'm more like the parent hat here, but given that, so my son is in grade 2, given that he's already been at Kings Road for 3 years, I just feel bad for a lot of the students in this situation now who have made friends, got to know the school, are part of a YMCA program, and now he could be taken out of that area and sent to a different school when other people in that area have already started at Central and already have developed all their relationships, and they get to keep them.
Fully understand that point, Stan. I know you're wearing your parent hat, but that's also that's why we're seeking representation in this area,
Right.
to better understand what their lived experiences is and what it's going to be potentially. And that's all part of the implementation process of this too, is having regard to those things. And do we implement it entirely if we do move ahead with this option? Do we provide some legacy exemption, or I'm saying legacy exemption, formally it's called grandparenting. We just switched our terminology. So are we going to grandparent legacy exempt students to finish off because they've been there for a while? These are all part of the conversation down the road as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Susanna. Robbie?
Just point out that there is that split cohort there. So those communities right now are already losing their cohort in grade 7, when the rest of Kings Road is going to Aldershot and they're going to Central. So there's a lot of questions to ask about how that change would happen in the short run. But in that long run perspective of, can we get kids staying with their cohort, tends to work better for students to have that ongoing social connection.
Suzanne, is that follow-up or is that the old hand?
Sorry, it was the old hand. I'll take it down.
It's all good. It's all good. Just want to make sure. I think it was at zone 12. All right, zone 12. Yep. From Tecumseh over to Lakeshore to address that split cohort situation. And again, we've got zone 10, 11, which I think I've covered off already. Again, similarly here for FI, we've got Tecumseh being a dual track school. And in this scenario, we're going full 2 to 8 for both FI, or for the FI program. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my mouse here. And then Maplehurst, this is the one, so I alluded to earlier, where we're not going towards converting schools from a K to 6 to a K to 8. Maplehurst historically has had, I believe, some K to 8 way back when. So there is potentially an opportunity to keep the FI students that are at Maplehurst for 7 and 8 as well. So that way they can finish off their elementary career throughout their term at Maplehurst. And then when they graduate, they're going to Burlington Central, as opposed to having to hop back and forth between Maplehurst to Tecumseh for 7 and 8, and then back to Burlington Central. That's too many transitions. So we're just going to hold them back at Maplehurst for an additional 2 years. Maplehurst stays a K to 6 school. Sorry. So Maplehurst is going to be K to 6 for English, 2 to 8 for FI, and then Tecumseh is 2 to 8 for FI. So you recall in option 2, we had it as a 2 to 6 to avoid that issue. So the inverse of this is introducing 7 and 8s at Maplehurst to make sure there's some continuity there. Alma, I haven't forgotten you. I'll get to you in a second, just to finish off here. Then zones 10 and 11, again, we're sending them to Clarksdale and Rolling Meadows. Alma?
Hi, good evening. Thanks. I'm a parent of 2 boys at Maplehurst, both in French immersion. I wanted to go back to something that you had said during the introduction around that schools that go up to grade 6 have a certain infrastructure related to resources, and schools that go up to grade 8, specifically the grades 7 and 8, have more infrastructure related to whether it was science labs or if I'm misspeaking, I apologize. So my question around the Maplehurst piece, because it's only been a K to 6 for many years, what capital infrastructure or upgrade would be required for the school in order to meet the required curriculum for those grade 7s and 8s?
To be honest, there's not a lot of capital for major conversions. So that's kind of the offset of this option, where you wouldn't get the same level, I would say, at Maplehurst as you would as a school that was built as a 7 and 8. I'll just be clear about it. That's kind of the offshoot of the option, and in maintaining, not the offshoot, I guess, the counterbalance. In maintaining 7 and 8s there and some continuity, not having to go to Tecumseh, then Burlington Central for your secondary FI, you're going to be going to a school that may not have the same facilities as a standard 7 and 8 for FI, for the FI students. So it's not ideal, but it's kind of addressing one issue by creating another, and it's which one of those are more important, which may or may not make this option viable. And then it also, the other side of it is that Tecumseh can actually be a 2 to 8 school. So there's some consistency with the graduating cohorts, not having graduating year in grade 6 for FI and 1 and 8. So again, it's not ideal. And what I'll say in all these options, it's a great point you're bringing forward, Alma. none of these are going to be perfect. They're all going to have benefits and disbenefits, pluses and minuses. It's kind of the sum of their parts, as long as they're generally adhering to our criteria that we're going to be defining as a committee. Are they acceptable overall as being the option that surpasses the others? So that's part of the review, and those are fair points. So I would say that no, they probably won't get the level of capital investment to bring it to that standard, because it'd be a very large investment for effectively what's going to be a classroom and a half or 2 classrooms worth of students.
Okay, fair. But can I ask the question? I apologize. I was driving for the first 45 minutes, so I didn't.
No, you're good.
The decks as you were projecting, and I know you had referred. I was listening, but I was not watching. That there's going to be criteria that we're going to use to evaluate all the options that are being proposed. Is that one of the criteria that will be identified specifically around whether these changes, whether the schools will actually have the resources to meet, whether it's curriculum or requirements in some of the older grades, assuming that all of the schools have the required infrastructure for K to 6?
I would say that yes, there's a criteria called viability of the program. Usually we look at that in terms of the number of students available in the program to make sure that it's going to have a sustainable population. But I think the same argument can be made on the infrastructure of the school, whether it's available, or there's also the option of other. If that is an option we want to develop as a committee, we can always add criteria as well. Sorry, not option. Okay. If it's an additional consideration we want to add as a committee, we can do so as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Elma. So yeah, just to wrap this up again, Tom Thompson, alleviating a lot of the enrollment pressures at the school long term. Central, we're staying in and around that 85-90% utilization, so that's where we want to be. Lakeshore, we're by adding a few of the additional zones and fixing the split cohorts, we are improving utilization overall. Tecumseh, with the additional changes in the introduction of the program and the offsetting English track students, we are in and around the capacity of the school. So probably a few portables considered there. The one thing that does happen in all this, though, and is in removing the 7 and 8s, or incorporating the 7 and 8s at Tecumseh, we are removing them from Burlington Central Elementary. So we are creating quite a bit of surplus space at the school. So that is creating a little bit of an issue. Kings Road, again, impact is present but minimal overall. Same thing with Maplehurst. Sorry, not Maplehurst. In the addition of the 7 and 8s, we are bringing Maplehurst closer to its full capacity, so we probably will be in portables sooner than we would have otherwise had if we didn't introduce those 2 grades. Aldershot Elementary, no major impacts there. Clarksdale, we have an increase, and Rolling Meadows, we have an increase too as a result of adding zones 10 and 11 for both the English and the FI program. Yeah, status quo schools again are McQuindon, Pineland, and Aldershot Elementary. Well, saying all these options too is what you'll notice is we haven't really found a good solution for McQuindon and Pineland in a lot of these. A lot of the ideas we had or solutions we potentially explored, it has a ripple effect to other schools that aren't necessarily ideal. So at present time, we haven't, admittedly as a planning services department, not the boundary review steering committee, we haven't come up with an ideal option yet for those, but that's not to say that our parent representative for those areas, we're more than happy to hear some options being discussed next week at our meeting. So just because we haven't explored any at the present time doesn't mean that they don't beg a review at a later date. So with, not sure what your first name is, but I'll call you Spencer.
Sorry, it's Brandy. I'm representing McQuindon. So we, as a council, we have sat down with our principal, and she has made it very clear, I think, that we could go up to grade 8. So if that could at all be a possibility, that would alleviate some of the Tecumseh influx as well.
That definitely deserves a follow-up. So it was Brandy, right?
Yeah,
Thank you, Brandy. We're gonna look into that. Trying to remember the school because I was there about a year ago.
that's okay.
Let
I'm
us
a
look into that.
planner.
We'll bring it back for next week.
Thank you.
So I know the answer to that from previous conversations, Fred.
I'm
It's-
all ears.
It's due to the gym size.
The gym size is too small.
Well, so it's a K to 6 school right now, and you need a larger
Yeah.
gym for IS. I'm pretty sure, or for intermediate levels.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, that because we've asked that before, I know in previous conversations.
Let's well, I'll take a look at the D&T and the science and the arts room. It kind of goes back, Brandy, to what we were talking about with Elma with regards to it's not ideal, it doesn't check all the boxes, but does it check enough of them? So maybe we just have to dig a little deeper and understand if there's other options there. But the offshoot might be you don't get the right size gym, and therefore it might impact your physical education program for your 7 and 8s, which might be an issue for them depending on how much they want to get into sports. But begs the question. Thanks for that question. Jesse, you're next.
Hi, thank you again. Representing Central Elementary. I'm just wondering, though, if thoughts have been made to how moving the 7 and 8 FI cohort to Tecumseh could affect retention at Central. Just thinking that right now those kids feed right into the FI program at Central. And I know I have my daughter's in grade 8, so there is the option of going to Nelson too. But I'm just thinking for retention rate, I just happen to know that that's an issue for high school and the board. If having that program at Central would be a positive, and whether or not that's been thought about.
It's definitely, an option one. That's one of the things I do like about having Burlington Central as the FI school, because effectively what you've created is an FI campus. It's pretty much from 2 to 12, you're in pretty much the same address, right? So I definitely see the advantage of that. The one concern I always have with Central is it is a K to 6 school, and it can get full real quick, and we don't have a lot of flexibility with portables. So if we so happen to have like an influx or an increase in students getting drawn in for the FI program, I don't want to get into a situation where we're creating an issue either. So that's kind of our hesitation with Central too, and being the FI school. But again, it's balancing those risks and benefits. So, but that is part of the question: is like, is this going to impact the viability of the program, the retention of our students? And I think that's the overall discussion we should be having in our next meeting. Is really driving into those points of we've given you the quantitative, and what we're really looking for from your parent, the parent representatives, is that qualitative piece. Like, what are we not seeing that may impact our numbers or our assumptions that we're making as part of these options?
Thank you.
So and thanks for the question, Jesse. So maybe I'll leave you guys with this to contemplate in the last hour that you had scheduled for this meeting. But you can do it yourselves. You don't have to sit here with me unless you want to. As part of the options, I'm happy to take any further questions on what we've discussed this evening. Upon reflection and reviewing some of the materials, in preparation for next week, let us know what stands out. What do you like? What do you don't like? have a good look at the boundary review criterias, kind of look at it as a perspective for yourself as a parent, yourself as a community member for that school, and as a wider BRC member looking at it as a system approach of the entirety of the area. So putting yourselves in the shoes of the other schools and think about on how we want to prioritize some of those criteria. And part of the other things that we want to maybe think about is we've given you kind of our first kick at the can on a few options and some considerations. Kind of like we alluded to earlier with our zones and what have you. I know you don't have benefit of the numbers now, but if you want to explore and think about, hey, what about moving zone X to school Y? Those are also things you can think about, and we can start discussing them at the next meeting. And then by the third meeting, we can have a review of those options that we've developed collaboratively. So that's kind of how I see this thing going moving forward. We're gonna have a lot more in-person meetings to kind of sit down and talk about these things. Michelle, did we get the zone projections, or not zone projection, but at least the zone enrollments available in the package? Or
I'll put it in the Google folder.
you're not on mute, but I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll put them on the Google folder, in the the next week.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll do that. Robbie?
Has everyone got access to the resources linked off of the option worksheets and resources? When I'm clicking on things, I'm getting access denied on a couple of them.
Oh yeah.
Lindsay?
Oh, I just had a logistical question. I'm not able to attend. I'm the parent rep from Lakeshore Public School, by the way. I'm not able to attend the meeting next week, but someone else on the parent council has offered to go in my place. Is that acceptable, or do you want to keep it to the consistent representatives?
Absolutely, buddy system. I know it's a big commitment. There's a lot of meetings. I know you're not all going to be there. So for continuity's sake, if there aren't two parent representatives, just let us know in advance so we're aware of who's coming. Yeah, we can definitely make arrangements for that just so that like I said, we have that continuity. I don't have issues with that.
Great, thank you.
Mitch, can you double check the permission and share rights on everything just to make sure that it's full access with anyone that has the link? I just want to make sure that make this as easy as possible.
Yep, I will do. I think it's just Robbie that I need to add to the folders just because he's relatively newer trustee.
Good stuff. All right. Oh,
Sorry, that criteria link was not working for me either.
The criteria link, I just put a copy in the Google folder.
You're talking about the one that was in the presentation, Carissa?
Got it. Yes. Thank you so much.
Perfect. You have actually, just thinking, in your free time, just have a look, guys. You don't have to do it now, but have a look, make sure you got access to everything. If you don't, reach out to Mitch, myself, and Michelle. I think we're all on the email, and just, reply to us, say we're having issues, and we'll make sure we'll get you guys connected as soon as possible. I'll also be doing, Vika, I'll get to you in a second. I'll be doing some, we'll do printouts too, especially for the first set of materials, just so that's, I'd rather not, but this is a lot of stuff to consume, and switching between screens is always a pain. So we'll get everything printed out for the first run. If you do have accommodation issues and you do need further prints down the road too, in terms of getting the other options printed, just let us know. We'll figure it out. Usually the process we use is we'll either ask your school administration to print it out and put it in your children's backpack, or if you need to, we can always figure out an alternative way. So we can work that out as we work through it. Vika?
Hello, I'm a central representative. Question is, it seems like French immersion is a huge piece here. Can you help us understand a little bit about why it makes more sense to move the French immersion program to Central or to Tecumseh instead of keeping it at Tom Thomson and then moving some of the English kids out? If that makes sense.
It does. That's a good question. Let me just get to, there we go. Tom Thomson as an example. So I'll just use this as a, you know what, apologies if this gets dizzying when I'm scrolling up and down the slides that we have. There's the slide we need. So the main issue for that is the size of the program relative to the size of the school. The FI program, and you'll see this even better off in the charts that we provide individually, but it's kind of the FI programs, I'd say almost half of the total enrollment of the school. So for us to make room for the FI and reducing the overall utilization, you're almost having to wipe out the majority of the English track program. And that's where we're almost getting to a program viability concern of, are we making the class sizes so small that we have extremely small class sizes? And are we forced into a triple split situation where we have 3 grades to 1 class, which we don't want in any scenario? So that's why essentially is we almost have to take the full FI program wholesale out of Tom Thomson. And we're also not exploring creating another single track school in South Burlington. We've got Pineland already. I don't think we want to go down that road again, because then that presents a whole other set of complications for those schools in terms of overall impacts. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And I do understand why moving it to Central makes sense. I understand the whole French immersion campus being over there. Can you tell us a little bit about why you see Tecumseh as being another great option for the FI program?
Tecumseh is kind of a, sorry, I'm trying to find the right words here, domino approach. It's more, we definitely saw an opportunity with Zone 10, trying to get them to a more proximate school closer to them, albeit still bust. And then in offsetting that, we're creating quite a bit of room at Tecumseh. It's somewhat central, it's close to, and it's a K-8 facility. So in Tecumseh being a K-8 facility, if we were to introduce the full grade run, the full infrastructure is there for it. So we're not running into the issues like we discussed earlier with Helma, with Maplehurst not having those special classrooms. And it's pretty much the only, it's the only K-8 school that we have south of QE in this study area zone that we're looking at. So those are essentially the reasons why we're looking at as a potential candidate for the FI program.
Thank you.
Size of the school too. Sorry, that was the last thing. It's a much larger school as well, where all the other schools, there are a lot of the smaller build, not as many portables are available on site. So we've got more limitations on how we can address enrollment pressures and what have you down the road. So that was the alternative to why we're looking at it. Caitlin?
Just on that note too, with removing FI from Tom Thomson, are you expecting the enrollment from that area to actually decrease in that program because it's no longer walkable for those students now going to Tecumseh or Central?
Yes, we are. So part of the assumptions we're looking at is when the school is the dual track school that has the FI program will always have a higher proportion of their grade 1s going into grade 2 French. So usually that's, I don't know the exact numbers. We can definitely talk about them, but Tom Thomson, we're not making the assumption that it's going to be 30% of grade 1s that are going to go to the FI program. We've actually downgraded that to something that's more consistent with the area, which will probably be around the 10 to 15% mark. So you're going to have a higher number of English track students staying at Tom Thomson because they don't opt to go into the French program.
And just a follow up to that then too, do you have historical data that represents switch over from kids from FI to English too, because of the excessive, they don't have to change schools or they don't have to go through
like a special exemption to stay at their school that they were at for FI to kind of stay with the same cohort. Do you know what I mean? Like you get a kid who goes for 2, 3 and then drops out in 4 and stays in the English, goes back to the English stream, I should say.
Oh, I see what you mean. So the attrition, so over the
yeah.
FI. So yeah, good question. I don't know if we get that deep into it. Michelle, for attrition on the recipient program, I know we lose a couple students here and there, a handful throughout the grades. Do we repatriate them back to the school afterwards in our projections, or is that just picked up in the progression factors?
So I review every year, grade by grade progression. Generally with French immersion, there is a 5% loss per grade.
Yeah.
And depending on the school, yes, we will build that into the English.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. I saw another hand pop up and it might have gone down again. I just want to make sure I'm not missing you.
It was mine. That was Caitlin asked my question. I was just wondering, not just 1 to 2 transition from English to French immersion at Tom Thompson specifically, but if there were projections for, let's say, we pulled French immersion from Tom Thompson, we have students in grade 5 and they're no longer going to continue in French immersion because Tom Thompson is their home school and they'll just continue in the English track. Are those projections within the numbers? And I think Michelle just answered that yes, those are.
It'd be the historic attrition, but the ones that say, "Oh, I'm not going to continue on," or "I'm not going to move to come," say that's kind of hard to predict. So we're just assuming that for the most part they're going to go. But that's where we start picking things up later on in this process, where after we have our public information meeting and we start determining what the legacy exemptions would be in terms of who's going to remain there and where the starting point's going to be. Like, are we just going to move the 3 and 4s and leave the 5 and 6 to graduate? Like, all of that will give us a sense of, what the initial impacts are going to be, and then carry that forward. That makes sense. So it's we're going to have a better sense of how we're implementing this before we start making those assumptions. All right. So if that's it for questions, Avna?
Hi, sorry. I know I'm probably the last one raising a hand out and everyone's just ready to wrap up the call. So sorry about that. This is a great call, by the way, and thank you so much for going above and beyond and sharing all the information. I'm doing this for the first time. I don't know if other parents on this call have been through a boundary review before, but the way you explained it and your team did it, Frederick, thank you so much. Just a quick question, and maybe it's not relevant, but it's more of the impact on FI in high school when the program is taken away from that school. So my eldest is in high school at Aldershot in the STEM program, but she got into that program because there's a separate application process and everything. She has friends in the FI program, and because of Aldershot no longer being a French immersion school in high school, she has friends who are in the FI program but are learning everything in English right now. How does that work when when the decision's been made to take away FI from an existing high school, but they have ongoing students in that track? And halfway through the school year, high school year, if the French immersion program is reallocated, in Aldershot's case, it got reallocated, I don't know where. But how do students continue their French immersion path in high school?
Great question, Bhavna. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong. For Aldershot, did we remove it secondary or for 7 and 8? I'm trying to remember that.
Aldershot, we removed it from Aldershot's an English track school. So what happened there is we were not getting enough numbers in FI to have a viable FI program.
And so that what you're mentioning, Bhavna, is exactly that. Is like we were experiencing that even when it was an FI school. I'm trying to remember exactly what we moved out of there, but that was the issue. We were getting so few students attending the FI program that we weren't able to essentially staff and provide the necessary resources to provide a good FI secondary program. So we've consolidated it with Burlington Central. It's a little bit more of a distance, but at least there's more of a robust population there. to make sure that we can sustain the program. So to answer your question, that's how we're trying to make sure that there is a viable population. And I don't think we're looking at moving. We're not looking at moving the FI program out of secondary and moving it to secondary schools, strictly elementary. I think we have a pretty sustainable program right now at Burlington Central and Nelson, where we have a pretty good student body to have the necessary resources. I'm not sure if that's answering your question though. Like, is that what you're looking for, or?
Partially, because there's still, I guess there wasn't enough mass and enough kids in the high school French immersion program at Aldershot in this instance, but there were kids that are still enrolled in that FI program, but they're getting all the instruction in English. So it's kind of counterintuitive, right? They don't want to leave high school to go to the other school because they don't want to lose their friends, and high school is critical anyways, but at the same time, they're French immersion, but not really a French immersion.
And that's what we want to avoid with like that. That's the whole piece about program viability, is if the program gets so small at a certain point in time, we're not offering FI anymore, like you're pointing out. We're essentially legacy exempting them to graduate out at Aldershot, because we acknowledge we don't want to drag you all the way back to Burlington Central, because you've established your relationship, especially later in the game. So yeah, that's what we want to avoid. Elementary, I don't see that being as much of an issue, but we do have to be cognizant of it as we're phasing out a program, to make sure that the necessary resources are still there at the elementary panel, so that we're not running into that situation. But that also explains some of the delicacy of staffing the FI program, because obtaining qualified French immersion teachers is a challenge for the board. So that's why we don't want to spread ourselves too thin in some of our plans for implementation.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Nick, am I missing anything on the program side of things? I just want to make sure I'm covering my bases, because not really my.
Yeah, no, Fred. When you mentioned about the Aldershot piece, the last piece we did was we moved 7 and 8 over to Central. So I think the question that was asked, a number of students chose to remain at Aldershot and remove themselves from FI. Just to clarify that last point there.
Okay, I appreciate that, Nick. Thank you very much.
All right. So again, thanks for bearing with me tonight. Appreciate your time and your questions. Very thoughtful, and we're gonna have a heck of a lot more coming forward. So again, if there's any issues accessing the resources, or if you have any additional questions of clarification or whatnot, by all means, we're here to answer. Just make sure you got Mitch, Michelle, myself, on that email. Just hit one of us up and we'll get to you as quickly as we can in preparation for next week. Pika?
Okay, sorry, one last question. As school representatives here, how would you suggest that we share this information to our school community? Is this something that you're doing? Is this something that we just simply share the website? Are we gathering, in the school library? What please let me know what you suggest.
My suggestion would be like, I wouldn't do the school library thing. I don't want to put you in that situation. But I would say you're kind of the conduit of information and kind of the air controller on this one. So as a committee, what we'll do, or sorry, as the board, what we'll do is we're providing notifications out to the community. We've got the website, we've got the email portal that's open, all those things. So for you, what I would say for your community is tell them, hey, listen, if you want to see what happened at the meeting, there's a video recording that's going to be posted usually within 48 hours of the meeting. Have at her, review it. All the resources are going to be posted online, so they're going to be able to see the presentation, the option sheets, and things like that. If they have any questions, there's kind of a fork in the road, and whatever you as parent representative feel comfortable with. Either A, feel free to go ahead and answer some of the questions and inform them of the process, what's going on, the options you're looking at. If you're feeling like maybe you want to engage us, direct them to the email that we have. Say, go ask your question there. The planning staff will answer it, and then we can share the responses as part of as our committee meetings, or they can be topic areas that we explore pretty much as part of our housekeeping process at the start of every meeting. And if you want to present to your parent council, let them know what's going on, what the next steps are, by all means, feel free to do that. And if you have the voice of your community, whether it's in your social media or whatnot, you're like, hey, the PIM or the public information meeting is going to be on, sorry, the date escapes me right now, but on March X, you can post that too. It's all your level of comfort. One of the big things is, like I said, you're the conduit of information. You're a resource for your parent community. If they have questions for your concerns, you can relay that over to us. You can help assess some of it. It's all what your level of comfort is. We're always there to back you up if you need us.
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, again, I very much appreciate you taking the time tonight. I'm looking forward to our meeting next week when we meet in person and start going through the numbers. So have a great rest of your evening and see y'all next week.